All right, let's talk to Damien Tomlinson and, of course, Scott Emerson about these particular front pages. Now, obviously, on a big story like this, there's different ways that editors approach this particular story, guys. Now, if we head straight to the Australian, the headline there, Aussie volcano deaths feared. 5 people killed on island tourist visit. Experts warned tours not safe. If we then, and you can see that massive plume of smoke emanating from that particular island. There's one of the victims arriving at Wakatan airfield, a helicopter damaged in the eruption, and tourists wait to be rescued from White Island. And as you can see, they are absolutely covered in sulphur and smoke. If we then go to the Herald Sun, the headline is Voyage into Hell. At least 5 people were killed, 18 injured and 20 missing. Tourists explored crater minutes before the eruption, and several Australians have been caught in a deadly volcanic blast in New Zealand's Bay of Plenty. Of course, we head to the Advertiser, and the Advertiser has a searing photo on its front. At least 5 dead, 20 missing in New Zealand volcanic explosion. Fears mounting for Australian tourists caught up in the tragedy. The Daily Telegraph goes with the incredibly emotive headline, Hellhole, 5 dead, fears for at least 20 others. Aussies from cruise liner island tour missing. And, of course, if we get to the front of the Courier-Mail, I think the Courier-Mail has probably come up with what I consider to be the best of the headlines, and that is Island of the Damned. At least 5 dead, many missing, and grave fears held for Aussie tour group after New Zealand volcano erupts. Damien, I've got to say, you've spent many, many years on the backbench of newspapers, and these are the sorts of stories that obviously newspapers cover very, very well. But it's an extraordinarily tragic circumstance, because we know that that cruise liner, an incredibly popular cruise liner, the Ovation of the Seas, was moored just 40 kilometres from there, and many Australians and many Kiwis took the boat over to that particular island and were there. And tonight there are serious fears that none have survived.
That's right, and it's you know, it's an incredibly popular tourist destination, the Bay of Plenty, and this one is particularly grim, considering the breaking news tonight that the aerial sweeps of that island have shown no sign of life. So it seems that whoever may have been stuck there will be stuck there forever. As you mentioned, you know, I've been on some backbenches now, and when these sorts of big stories break, it is a very weird feeling. I remember the tsunami in Japan in 2011, further back with the tsunami on the Boxing Day, tsunami in Indonesia and elsewhere. There is a stunned silence for a little while as people just watch the drama unfold on the television. But quickly it becomes a bit of a fevered scenario where we're wondering how we do this and do it right. There's obviously a breaking element to it where the website needs to be right across everything that's happening, no matter what. But for the paper and the editors especially, they're sitting back thinking about how to present this news 12, 16, 18 hours later. And often what you read in the morning is a much more considered and refined version of the breaking malaise that you sort of experienced during the day. Yeah,
look, and I suspect, Lisa, what we're looking at tonight at the moment may not be what we'll see on the front pages tomorrow morning, if we find out that there's confirmations in what we're hearing tonight, that there are a number of Australians who've been killed. Now, hopefully that's not the case, but look, that seems to be what the late reports we're getting here, and I think that'll be the next element of this story, clearly, for Australia, is what Australians have been caught up in this 5 at this moment, but obviously, as Damien just said, the aerial sweeps are showing no sign of survivors at the moment, which means it's at least 10 and possibly more missing, assumed dead at this stage. And of course, then there's the kind of inquisition in terms of why was this allowed to occur, given that clearly there was raised concerns about volcanic activity on White Island. There was concerns being raised, but tourists were still allowed to go there. Look, it's all good and easy in hindsight, but that's where this story will go now.
No doubt, and that's a question, Damien Tomlinson, that I want to put to you. And obviously, we have to be incredibly respectful tonight. We have families that are grieving. We have families that are in the dark as to how their loved ones are. But it's clear that, you know, seismology experts warned that this was a particularly vulnerable site. It was certainly New Zealand's most active volcano. And I guess, you know, the obvious question is, why were they allowed to go?
That's right, and of course that is what comes to mind as soon as you get over the initial shock of how this has happened. You know, the worst kind of tragedies are holiday tragedies, where people have gotten on a boat, and said goodbye to loved ones, and
Exactly.
never come home. You know, it's the absolute worst case scenario, horror. But of course, yeah, the question must be asked: how does this happen? Seismologists had warned. The threat level had been increased recently. You know, what may in hindsight be obvious signs that it was going to be dangerous to go there were happening.
Scott, I did a bit of research before I came on, and you know, some of the tourists that had been on that island in the last 3 months had spoken of the overwhelming pungent smell of sulphur, and in some instances, in some parts of the island, they had to wear gas masks. And of course, you know, if the wind was blowing the wrong way, there could be issues with breathing. I guess the question that I just asked Damien, I'm going to ask to you. Why?
Well, look, I think you have seen this, and sadly, you can't equate tragedy with tragedies. But how often, and we've all covered these stories in the past, where all the signs are there, but things continue to happen, and then until there's a tragedy, we don't see the rules change. We've seen it, I think, and the one I'm just thinking about as we go through is cases where you've seen whitewater rafting, and suddenly there's been evidence of clearly that
zip lines.
They shouldn't have occurred, and suddenly it does occur. And in this case, there was warnings, there was raised volcanic activity, as you're citing in your research, Gleeso, that those who had been there recently were indicating that raised activities, concerns being raised. So we will see as we go through the aftermath for this terrible tragedy. But as you quite rightly say, tonight our thoughts need to be with those who clearly have lost loved ones, and those who are not sure what might have happened to those family and friends who we don't know where they are at the moment.
And of course, stay tuned to Sky News. We'll have the latest in our midnight AEDT news break, 11 o'clock in Queensland. So make sure if you are interested, and obviously there are a lot of Australians who are very interested in this story, we'll keep you up with the latest.